welcome to today's episode of TSARP. I'm your host, Andrew Weir, and today we have a very special guest.
Matisse Verduyn. Thanks for asking me to be on the show.
Yeah, so we also have Sam and Steven here helping us out with this interview.
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, so thank you all for being on the show today. Matisse, you said you mostly use JavaScript right now, right?
Yes, I started actually in PHP, but eventually I moved into Node and JavaScript.
Yeah, we did a little tier list video back, I don't know, a few months ago, kind of talking about different programming languages, and PHP was on there, and I forget where we put it, but I don't think we rated it very highly. I don't have a lot of experience in PHP. JavaScript I've been using a lot lately with the websites I've been building. Yeah. So what's your current projects you're working on and stuff like that?
Currently, I'm working on a low-code app builder called PackageJS, and it's built using Node.js and JavaScript. So it makes it a little bit easier to build web applications.
Wow, that's cool.
Thanks.
Yeah, it is really cool. I've done a lot of JavaScript recently, I can say that. I've been working on a few different websites, but I haven't done a lot in Node.js because the hosting platform I'm using actually does not allow Node.js. But I think it's actually good when you're starting out, so you kind of learn, how to get around without it, Yeah, if the platform I used didn't restrict what files were there, then I definitely would be using it. But yeah, I think what I'm doing now is pretty good.
Well, you can do a lot of things on your own computer as well. So Node.js you could install on your own computer and use it. But yeah, learning within the confines of some of the web products is sometimes a lot easier and a lot just there's more, you feel like you have a little bit more control to start. So it's definitely good to work with those programs that way.
Yeah, and we have a lot of help, not just at school with our coding program. But I don't know how it was when you went to school, but like how did you kind of find out you wanted to code and how did you learn your skills and stuff?
Well, actually, I didn't start coding until college. So in high school, I focused mostly on baseball and getting really good grades, which is important.
hmm
And then I went to college for baseball, but I got hurt in my first semester.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, it was pretty devastating because it was like the only thing I loved to do. And specifically, I had one of the fastest bat speeds because it was an objective problem that I could just fixate on and solve. So when I got hurt, I naturally thought that I should, explore statistics because I'd done well in math in school. But problem solving and creating systems really transfers well into coding. So I got more interested in that. And so at the time, too, there was this wave of teach yourself how to code, which I don't know if there was one prior to that year. So it was a really big thing. A lot of sites popped up like SitePoint, and at the time, too, with Stanford and Harvard and MIT. So I took those classes, and that's kind of how and I also enrolled in classes at college. But then I kind of went from there into focusing on processing something called the MLB pitch effects data to do statistics, and then shifted into making iPhone apps and then games, and basically just keeping myself motivated by constantly pursuing curiosities.
Cool.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So before you really started to code in college, did you ever think about going into a field like that? And like, how was coding perceived back then? Was it like, oh, you have to be really smart, or like you need a lot of computer and tech skills? Like, how was it really back then? You know?
Well, I guess that's kind of what I was trying to get at is I hadn't ever thought of coding before. And it seemed so obvious to me when I started coding that these are all my skills. So it was kind of a natural, like, oh, I was good at problem solving before, and this is for problem solving. So it was, I guess the way I got into coding was, and this is the way I would recommend if you're getting into coding, is if you find a problem you want to solve, you pick a problem you want to solve, and then don't even code it yet. Just do something manual, which is exactly what I was doing. I had all of this PitchFX data, which they have like millions of files, and I was just looking at the data, and I was like processing it by hand and figuring out how to put it into Microsoft Excel, and eventually, after doing things with paper and pencil, after a while, you kind of want to automate it, because you realize it's going to take a lot less time. And that's how I decided finally, like, okay, I need to code. Like, this is going to save me months. So, yeah, that I think is the best way to get into coding.
So was
Interesting.
that your like first project, like your first step into the coding world?
Yep, that was it. And then I turned it into a website. So that's how I got into the PHP stuff.
Mm.
That's really
'Cause-
cool.
yeah, that is. And
I
you
wanna. Oh,
no, you can go ahead.
I wanna know what made you decide to start with like PHP and not like something simple like Python.
Well, the script that was written for getting the data from MLB PitchFX was written by somebody that I think worked for them, and it was
Huh.
in Perl, which I didn't learn Perl after I used that script. But so once I got the data on the computer, I wanted to figure out how to use it, and I think at about the same time, I was looking at something called WordPress, which I think people still use a lot today.
Yeah, it's
Um,
very popular.
yeah, so it makes it really easy to get started, which is very similar to low code. You can use the software, and within the confines of the software, you can do a lot. But then when you want to start customizing things, like making plugins, you have to learn PHP. So it's
Mm,
kind of a natural, good way of getting into programming, is to start from something like that.
Interesting.
Yeah, and something you did, which I used to do, and then now I'm kind of just focused on Python and web development. But like you, after that, you said you went into like games and iPhone apps and
Mhm.
all that stuff. How was like that? How did you get into that after PHP and stuff?
I think just purely out of curiosity. I started making iPhone apps, and then I made a game called Backyard Bandits, which was like you had dogs, and like there were these squirrels, and they'd run from the tree to your doghouse, and you'd have to like chase them around and catch the squirrels before they stole the dog bones from your doghouse.
Yeah,
That
we
was so many years ago.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because what we do a lot in school, especially in the earlier grades, is Scratch, and it's a very like simple block-based way to make games. Because I think
Mm,
one of the best ways of learning programming is games because it
Hmm.
gets you very engaged in what you're doing, and you can clearly see what the next step is, what you need to do, and it's fun. And when you're done, you have something you can share with other people that isn't so like focused
Dry.
on something. Yeah. And
Yeah.
it's not like, "Oh, do you advertise? This is only for advertisers." Anyone, like anyone can enjoy a game.
True.
yeah.
Very true.
Yeah.
It's a common denominator.
Yeah, what you were saying about what you're currently doing with PackageJS, that was pretty interesting. You want to tell us a little more about what you do with that?
So PackageJS is a low-code builder. Are you guys familiar with low-code and no-code? The difference, or
A little
Not
bit.
not really.
Not
okay.
much.
Well, low-code, it just makes it easier to build. So it's kind of abstracted away some of the complexities of doing tasks that you find yourself doing over and over again when you're making things.
Mm,
Specifically web apps. There are commonalities, and when you start to build software, you start to wonder like, okay, I have to do this again, So eventually you kind of a lot of people will build something called boilerplate, and that's just a way of getting their project started quickly. But after doing that too for a while, you abstract away some of those things, and then you have a framework, and that framework just gets things up and running, and it seems like you don't even have to do any work anymore. But it doesn't limit you because you can still code within the confines of the software. Whereas no code is great to get started, but a lot of them, especially web-based services that you would use for no code, you can't code. So if you run into a wall, you can't do you can't implement the functionality unless you have the creator of that software implement the functionality. So that's kind of the difference between the two.
Yeah, I think by saying that, that sparked another thing I've been thinking about recently, back on the topic of Scratch. Like, like with Python, you can import libraries and have so much stuff you can just add to the language. Even JavaScript, all with NPM, and all that stuff. But with Scratch, kind of like you were saying, if the creator of Scratch doesn't add something, you're just confined exactly to what they've given you. Which we were actually thinking about doing an episode that might come out next week or something, about like 5 things they should add to Scratch. And one of them was going to be like a way to import libraries or make your own libraries. Because when you can expand on what the creator has given you, it opens up a whole new world.
That's a brilliant insight. I think that would be a fantastic suggestion.
Yeah, and and a program we use at school called Kidoyo. One thing I love about it is it's very easy to talk to the creator of it. He's always active on its discussion platforms and stuff. So like whenever there's a bug or a question you have, he's right there to answer it. Which would be really cool with really anything. Like one day if I make a big platform or something, I would love to just have people ask questions and fix them, or because the best insight is having the creator right there, the person who made it, and ask him questions and give him feedback.
Yeah, being reachable is that's really awesome.
Yeah. So it sounds like you didn't originally think that your career was going to go towards coding, but sounds like it turned out pretty well.
I think so far. Yeah, doing a lot of client work for the past decade, and then for the past 3, really kind of focusing on solving this problem of low code.
Do you think one day you'll expand to another type of development, or do you think web development and JavaScript and all that is your favorite, or do you think there's something else you like better?
Oh, I absolutely agree. I think I've been waiting to just move back into machine learning, which was part of that MLB pitch effects data. I started to predict at bats. So that was kind of the goal. I wanted to know like what pitch is coming next. So I really need to move back into that. I did some blockchain stuff, but I kind of wasn't super interested in that. But yeah, I know that it's good to go back into that. So I think maybe those are the next areas of focus.
Yeah, machine learning and AI is a big topic right now.
Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah, and I've been thinking about looking into it, but just haven't gotten the time because I've been working on a bunch of other projects. But yeah, machine learning is just really interesting to me, not because of what it can do, like AI and GPT-3 and all that stuff coming out, but like I don't know, I just like to have sets and sets of data, run it through a program, and have it just analyze it all for you right there.
Yeah, so similar to low code, basically what I was explaining about abstracting things away, that's exactly how machine learning works. So it's just saying, what is the point here of this data? Like, what is it supposed to be doing? It's extricating which is basically what a really good software developer does anyway when they're writing code. It just means untangling or asking yourself, like, what is the purpose? Like, what is this thing trying to accomplish, or what is it trying to solve, and then cutting directly to that. So ChatGPT has gotten really good at, like, what is the point of conversation, and
Yeah.
it's kind of scary, isn't it?
It's gonna take over our job. We're not gonna be able to get employed anymore.
Oh, I don't think so.
Yeah.
It could. It has the ability to.
Well, it lacks a self-awareness, so it
Yeah.
doesn't have a self to test on. And so, like with programming or with anything, analogies require empathy, and an empathy requires that you have a self. So even though it can summarize a lot of things, I know you guys have done research for school, and your teachers have probably told you to be careful of your sources. So when you train a model like that, it's got a lot of data, and it might be able to tell you after reading 50 articles about, I don't know, coffee, that coffee is really good for you. But it can't actually drink coffee and then say, like, oh, when I drink coffee, I get a stomach ache. Only humans can do that. So for a while, we're still going to have our advantage.
So yeah, I was using ChatGPT yesterday, and it was giving me wrong answers, and I knew they were wrong answers. But what was really cool and interesting was when I would say that's wrong, it would suddenly, I guess, go back to whatever database it was using, or because the database it's using has information from all different sources. So it's not one thing telling it, okay, this is the right answer. It could be 500 different sources giving it different right answers. So when you say, like, hey, that's not correct, it will go back, check it, and then be like, oh yeah, you're right, this is the right answer. Which I think is really cool, and I don't know if that's then reporting it to the database and being like, hey, this might not be correct, or it's just saving it to my conversation. But it's just
I
one
see.
way that machine learning is building on itself, and ever, like, without need of programmers, it's learning and it's sending it back and saving it for later. But yeah, I really am interested in the machine learning topic, and at some point I'll definitely look more into it. Uh, with just collecting data. And what's funny is ChatGPT and all different AIs can program more machine learning programs. So it can make itself, and it can teach you how to make itself, and it's kind of funny.
Yeah, that's a bit of recursion.
Yes. Um, yeah, so thanks for being on today's episode. It was fun talking to you, talking about where you learned your skills, and kind of your story.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Thanks for having me on, guys.
yeah, and thanks for everyone listening. And we will see you in the next episode. Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.